And now, let's join ace broadcaster Mamode Akuga as he takes us inside the Niger Delta.
Hello and welcome to Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of communities in Nigeria's oil-rich region. I am Mamode Akuga. As usual, the program is laced with interesting segments designed to keep you abreast with recent developments in the Niger Delta region. This edition of the program will bring you some of the latest developments pertaining to the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC. That, of course, is the agency set up to bring quick development to the Niger Delta. We'll also bring you issues bordering on the crisis of environmental pollution and underdevelopment, which, of course, are the core of the Niger Delta question. First, we begin with a report on a recent tax feud between the NDDC and the Rivers State Internal Revenue Service. Last Tuesday, workers were denied access to their offices following the sealing off of the corporate headquarters of the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, in Port Harcourt by officials of the Rivers State Internal Revenue Service over an alleged tax evasion. The incident at the Dapa Biriye House resulted in a mild drama, which was captured by correspondent Chika Obodozie.
We're standing right here at the Aghoro Dapa Biriye House that houses the NDDC on Aghoro, Port Harcourt, that has been sealed, shut down totally this morning by the Inland Revenue Service of Rivers State.
The commission was said to have failed to remit withholding taxes to the Rivers State government for about 4 years, prompting the Rivers State Inland Revenue Service to secure a court order to seal off its office. Our crew spoke to the Deputy Director Corporate Affairs of the NDDC, Chijoke Amonadi, who said that though the present board and management of the commission inherited tax indebtedness to the Rivers State government, it had, as a responsible corporate citizen, commenced the process of meeting its statutory obligations.
It's important for us to restate that the NDDC, as a responsible corporate citizen, had begun to dispense with all obligations as raised. Last week, following conversations with them, we had paid the first of the tranches we agreed mutually to use as a process to dispense the entire obligation. This week, the second tranche had already been prepared, and I'm sure they will receive it this week.
Based on a mutual agreement between both parties, the NDDC spokesman said there was no need for the sealing of the commission's premises, but the leader of the tax team, Mainsin Endebo, contradicted this position.
What is embarrassing about this is that a week before now, we already had made payments to them. What better goodwill is that? That we met with you and we agreed on what to do, and we have begun to do it. So what's the justification for this? Except perhaps to embarrass the NDDC.
We have made frantic efforts to collect these revenues from them. They have not yielded a much desired result. So we resolved to approach the court. And it is the court that gave this order, the ex parte order that brought us here. The order is clear about the amount of money that they are owing us. And that's what we came here to recover. That is accruals, their own self-assessed withholding tax payments, accruals from penalty and interest that gave up about 1.8 billion. For goodness sake, tax is a creation of law. And we have their professionals that have been doing the calculation. So what they calculated is supposed to attract interest and penalty for late payments.
This is the second time the Rivers State Inland Revenue Service is occupying the NDDC premises over non-compliance with tax payments, grinding activities to a halt on both occasions in a commission that attends to the needs of hundreds of Niger Deltans on a daily basis.
Inside the Niger Delta.
In a related development, the ad hoc committee in the House of Representatives investigating the total outstanding sum due to the Niger Delta Development Commission NDDC between 2000 and 2017 has read the Riot Act to the following contributors to the funding of the commission. Members of the committee who expressed disappointment over the absence of all chief executives of oil companies except for the managing director of the NDDC, Nsima Ekere, at a public hearing, have suggested penalties for defaulting contributors to the funding of the commission. Correspondent Tekena Amiofori brings us details of the report.
The Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC) was established by an Act of Parliament in 2000 to function as an interventionist agency saddled with the responsibility of promoting sustainable development and stability in the Niger Delta. Under the Act establishing the commission, the federal government is to make statutory contribution of 15% of total accruals to the NDDC, while the oil companies operating in the region are to remit 3% of their total annual budgetary allocations to the Commission. The recent investigative hearing by the committee, led by Rufai Ahmed Chachangi, follows reports of huge indebtedness to the NDDC by both the federal government and the oil companies, a development that has prevented the Commission from living up to its mandates over the years. Between 2000 and 2017, the federal government and the oil companies were said to have failed to remit over 1.5 trillion naira to the NDDC, while President Muhammadu Buhari has directed the federal ministries of finance and budget and planning to find possible ways to defray such debts. The Senate last year invited the supervising ministers twice for questioning, but the finance minister Kemi Adeosun was reportedly absent on both occasions.
We have several thousands of projects ongoing. We have several thousands of contractors unpaid. And we need funding so that we can pay these contractors, get them to go back to site and complete these projects.
Disturbed by a report that only about 45 oil companies are in touch with the NDDC in respect to the funding of the commission, members of the committee demanded a comprehensive report on the current status of all oil companies operating in the Niger Delta.
It is your responsibility to help the Niger Delta people or to help the Commission rake in its funds so that that region can benefit according to the law. In the next couple of days, you will update us with the list of the present status of companies operating in that zone.
If the people that are liable to pay, the oil companies, if they don't pay their own part, then it is hard for you to implement that budget. When they do not pay what they are supposed to pay, I can compare it to economic sabotage or economic crimes.
The lawmakers at the public hearing moved a motion to introduce in the Act establishing the NDDC penalties for defaulting in making statutory contributions to the funding of the Commission. Tekena Amiofori, reporting for Inside the Niger Delta.
Correspondent Tekena Amiofori there, relating the position of the nation's federal lawmakers on the funding of the NDDC. Our next package on the program is a special report on a recent oil spill in Aghoro community in Ekirimo local government area of Bayelsa State. The impact of ecological devastation in the community is indeed very disturbing, as you will soon find out in this report. On Thursday, 17th May 2018, the tranquil Aghoro community in Ekirimo local government area of Bayelsa State lost its calm to a massive oil spill along the 24-inch Trans-Ramos pipeline owned and operated by Shell Petroleum Development Company SPDC. The spill, which resulted from equipment failure, quickly spread across the riverine community and other neighboring communities, leaving in its wake an unprecedented damage on the entire ecosystem. The aquatic environment appeared to have been worse hit by the spillage. On a visit to Aghoro community shortly after the incident occurred, it was observed that this river, which serves as a major source of livelihood for its inhabitants, had been covered with large crude oil deposits discharged from the ruptured pipeline. The magnitude of the pollution was such that few species of fish and aquatic resources could withstand the pollution in the wake of the oil spill. This development has generated fears about an impending food crisis in the area following the people's dislocation from their means of livelihood. The distraught people of Aghoro community and their leaders have decided to take Shell to task. During a visit to the spill site recently, Fred Agbedi, an indigene of Aghoro community and member representing Sagbama Ikirimo Federal Constituency in the House of Representatives, drew attention to the issues of public health attendant on the pollution.
It's a devastation on the people and on the environment. And we expect that Shell and the federal government as joint partners in this business to quicken action. I expect that the medical team should have been on ground long before now, dealing with the issues of expected health hazard, because human lives are involved, environment is involved, and people need to have their source of living restored back to them.
The magnitude of the Aghoro oil spill and its negative impacts on the people has also drawn the attention of the Bayelsa State government. The state deputy governor, Jonah Bioga, is particularly more concerned about the long-term effects of the spill.
When you are exploiting the resources and you don't think of what happens to the human beings, the impact on life cannot be assessed now, maybe so after some years, but we are all breathing just the fumes of crude oil, like diesel. It is a very, very devastating incident. I want the company, particularly Shell, to redouble their efforts. We'll go and submit our reports to government so we can take a coordinated effort to ensure that these type of things are avoided in the environment.
Although Shell admitted that the Aghoro oil spill was on account of equipment failure and has since commenced remediation work, members of the community are worried that the process has been too slow. Delay, they say, is dangerous for the entire population there.
It's not a sabotage, it's a mechanical failure, which all of us know. Right now, we are recovering the crude from the sewer pit, and those on the charge of excavation of the pipe, they are on process. That's why you see the Swambugi on site. So that is where the areas we have gone to now.
Immediately provide medical support, bring water and other additional relief facilities. Because there will be a point where perhaps as leaders, we may not be able to contain the anger of the community. And that will not be the best interest for all of us.
When they brought 100 bags of this thing, though, we don't even appreciate it. Even we appreciate the ones that the governor from Bayelsa State brought to us.
Dr. Ebikeme Festus Odubo is a United States-based environmental consultant and regulator from Aghoro community. He had to take an emergency trip to his hometown to assess the extent of damage occasioned by the oil spill.
We have been able to gather that it was an equipment failure. There was a leak in the pipe. Is that pipe being inspected as required in the Nigerian environmental laws? They are supposed to have an oil spill containment plan. How effective is that plan? Those are some of the questions that we need answered.
Dr. Odubo blames incessant cases of environmental pollution in the Niger Delta on inadequate laws and poor enforcement. He is even more critical of the oil companies, notably Shell, whom he accuses of negligence in their approach to oil exploration and spillage containment in the region.
Somehow, these international companies take advantage of the lax environmental regulations in Nigeria, because what is going on in the Niger Delta and what is going on in Nigeria in terms of the environmental laws and how these companies respond is quite different from what happens when they operate in other countries. This water, the river where the spill occurred, is their source of water supply. So they're not even supposed to have any form of contact. In fact, they are not supposed to have any form of contact with that water. Right now, what Shell is supposed to be doing is provide alternative water supplies to these communities.
You are supposed to provide water for this period of time until it is imagined that the effect of the impact must have smeared down, must have been washed off. Otherwise, what do you expect the people to do? To continue to drink this water? And you know the health implications of it. Please, I'm calling on Shell, the federal government, to ensure that human life is valued much more than what compensation environmental remedy you are going to do. Even if you are going to do environmental remedy and the people are no longer alive, who are you doing the environmental remedy for?
One of the earliest explorers of crude oil in the Niger Delta, and by far the biggest joint venture partner in the management of Nigeria's oil wealth, Shell, has a visible presence in the region's major oil fields. Its larger-than-life influence notwithstanding, it appears the Anglo-Dutch oil giant no longer enjoys the trust and confidence of its host communities. Over the years, Shell has been accused of extracting crude oil without regard for environmental guidelines and regulations, and has employed divide-and-rule tactics to check resistance in its host communities. A common reference point is Shell's alleged involvement in the Ogoni oil conflict that claimed several lives in the mid-90s. The Aghoro oil spill is the latest in a series of ecological disasters recorded in recent times in Shell's areas of operations. The extent of damage on the community is obviously far-reaching and could have more devastating effects on all life forms if no proactive steps are taken to clean up the environment. In addition to a proper remediation work it is expected to carry out in this community, the onus is on Shell to adequately compensate the people in line with the globally accepted polluter pays principle. It is the considered opinion of the communities and environmental activists that any action taken to the contrary will amount to environmental injustice for the Aghoro people.
Inside the Niger Delta.
Quite a harrowing experience it has been for inhabitants of Aghoro community. We hope that action is taken urgently to offer the people a new lease of life. On our last issue on the program today, we'll dwell on the response of former Governor of Delta State, Dr. Emmanuel Uduaghan, to the crisis of environmental pollution, poverty, and instability in the Niger Delta. In this special interview, the medical doctor turned politician shares his thoughts on the way forward for the Niger Delta. Your Excellency, it's been 3 years since you left office as Governor of Delta State. How's life been with you generally?
I say life has been cool, less stressful, as you would expect. The office was quite hectic, but right now it's been cool. I'm able to manage my time better than I used to manage it before, so it'll be fine.
Well, the Niger Delta is a very, very battered region, environmentally and otherwise. But while you were governor of Delta State, you saw way ahead of everybody. And at that time, you came up with a policy of Delta beyond oil, that the region needs to look beyond oil, needs to begin to look at investments in other areas. 3 years after you left office, how are we carrying on with Delta beyond oil?
Well, first let me explain that Delta beyond oil is a philosophy. It was a project of like a building or a road. You know, it's a vision that is supposed to be on for years from one governor to the other. It was simply, please, as a governor, you must lead the state to look at the economic growth program beyond just focusing on oil. The Niger Delta really is a very rich area in terms of other things apart from oil. We have water, we have land, we have air. And our water, our land, the land is very fertile, the water is very resourceful, there are a lot of things there. Now, but over time, because of the impact of the oil production, it has affected our water, polluted the water, polluted the land. So, for me, knowing that oil is not a commodity that will last forever, for me, it was to use the money that was coming from oil to develop the other areas of the economy, especially in the area of agriculture, in the area of natural resources, mineral resources, and then of course the new actions now in terms of economy, that is ICT, and all those other infrastructure. So that was the philosophy or the vision of the Delta Beyond Oil.
In what area do you think we should be investing when we talk about beyond oil? For instance, like agriculture. Has there been any massive investment in agriculture?
The challenge we have in the Niger Delta, that's why I said it's a long-term process. The challenge we have is that air, soil, water, they are totally polluted. When we talk of massive agriculture now, it's a lot more difficult than before. So the first challenge, one big challenge that we initiated, but is actually beyond any state, is to regenerate our soil, to clean our water. It will take, with all the pollution that has gone on, it will take over 50 years to do it. And I think federal government is starting with Ogoni, try to do environmental repair in Ogoni. So it's a big challenge in the Niger Delta, and emphasis must be placed on that if we are going back to agriculture, whether in the soil or in the river. We started the process. We did some studies. We worked with the California government in America through AstraZeneca. We sent some of our people there for training and all that. So first of all, do assessment. And there was an assessment of the level of damage in Delta State. So that's one challenge. But physically, we also encouraged agriculture. We trained youths, what we call YETA, young youths in agriculture at Songa Amukbe. Various parts of, there's the Songa Amukbe that was built by my predecessor. So we sent some youths there for training. And when they came out, what we did was to put them together, either in clusters or individually. We got communities, we got their places to give them farm, to give them land to farm. They did a lot of farming, but unfortunately, 2012, during the massive flooding, it affected a lot of the farms. Unfortunately, we did not insure the farms, but that was also a lesson. Although we tried to help them to come back, but thereafter, we now know that no matter how small a farm is, no matter how small your agricultural program is, you must think of insurance. So we started them again. Some are doing well, some are not doing well. Then we also tried to do some big farming again, which also was affected by the flood. So we tried to do a lot on agriculture during my time. I think every successive government will be improving on it, but we need to do environmental mitigation.
Yes, Your Excellency, I was talking about 13% derivation. That there are a lot of Niger Deltans who feel that not much has been done with the 13% derivation, up to the point now that you have some Niger Deltans who are now saying, government shouldn't give the 13% directly to the states anymore. It should be tied to some kind of projects and all that. But you at least set up an oil producing communities commission. But having had the benefit of hindsight, you've seen that operate. You've seen how the 13% used to come. So the setup of the oil producing development commission and all that. For you now, with the experiences that you have, what is the best option for the Niger Delta with this extra statutory allocation that comes?
We had the Delta State Oil Producing Area Development Commission, which actually started, the law started from my predecessor, but I came and started funding it. And in my tenure, we released about 220 billion to the commission. Now, the advantage of that commission was that it helped us to create peace. People were now involved in government activities. There were some people who have never gotten any government contracts, you know, and they have never seen it, and they never smelt it, they never ever believed that they can get a government contract. But they got a lot of contracts from the Super Deck. So the contracts were like decentralized. They became part of his scholarships and all sorts of activities, but the Super Deck were now closer to the people than they used to be. And it helped us in maintaining the peace. It also helped us in development. Now, as we were leaving, the recommendation was that these things should be broken down, lower down. What does that mean? That it should be more of, we should have an ethnic unit of the Super Deck. So Isoko would have had their own, Ijo would have had their own, Ishekri would have had their own, Urobo would have had their own, Ndokwa. So as the monies come, depending on your quantum of production, which we know, you give them to the various ethnic groups. They have their own management team, you know. So that was how we wanted to break the Super Deck. But somehow it was scuttled politically. It's obvious to anybody 3 years down the line now that that is not what the way to go. The way to go is to bring the money down more to the various ethnic groups, and they manage it, you know, on ethnic basis. They know their needs, they know their capabilities and all that. It would have been better that way.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
Your time.
Thank you.
Inside the Niger Delta.
That was the former governor of Delta State, Emmanuel Udwara, preferring solutions to the Niger Delta question. Well, it's on this note that we draw the curtain on this edition of Inside the Niger Delta for today. But before we go, to inform you that our second edition of the week, Politics Inside the Niger Delta, will come to you at 11 p.m. tomorrow, Tuesday, on this same station. And we'll ask you to look out for that program. It's a big one, and there's going to be some political shake-up in Delta State. Until then, I am Mahmoud Akuga. Thank you all so much for watching, and bye for now.